This video is for all my normal class citizens busting up a sweat, working long and tiring hours, juggling multiple jobs, not to mention side hustles, all in an effort to make that one commodity, one essential commodity we call money. If that is you, then please do stay tuned, because in this video, I will share with you some of my lessons learned in my 20s when it comes to all things money. And my goodness, I've learned a thing or two, or a lot. Those who know better say money makes the world go round. My personal favorite is when they tell you that money buys you happiness. And they are 100% correct. Here's the thing though, you've got to have it, and you've got to have it in tons. A lot of money. And for an average Joe like you and myself, and I'm not talking to the crowd that is born with a silver spoon on their mouths. My God, you're lucky. To the rest of us average Joes, getting to that level of success, it's difficult to do, especially while still trying to live a normal life. Here's the good news though, in your 20s, you've still got plenty of time to learn, grow, make mistakes, go back and implement a successful strategy that will make you earn tons of money. Coming up are a couple of things that I learned in my 20s that can help you get to that success quickly. Lesson number 1, stop spending money on dumb things. Don't do it. And here's how. In my 20s, I considered myself to be a lot more financially disciplined when it came to my expenses and balancing them out with my income than my peers. But even I made a couple of mistakes, and one of them was spending my money on dumb things. To be honest, I don't remember anything of real value that I actually bought that I can sit here and say was mine in my 20s. Thinking long and hard, nope, nothing's coming. No. So yeah, I spent it on dumb things too. Might I also add that making a financially uninformed decision is also considered dumb when it comes to buying things. For example, yours truly went and bought property that she honestly couldn't afford. I couldn't fathom the idea of paying rent or money to somebody else, so I thought it appropriate that I invest in myself, right? Wrong. The price of rent versus the price of a house is completely different. And had I done proper research in terms of the rent, the amount, the bond, I would understand that there are other accumulating costs that you pay, for example, levies and municipal rates and taxes. But no, I just wanted a house, because why should I give somebody else money? A dumb reason to buy an entire house. So my advice, if there's something you really want to buy, emphasis on the word want, give it 1 week. Write it down, give it a week, and go think about it. After a week, if you still come back to what you've written down and you still want it, then you can go and get it. But chances are you would have moved on to your next want. I will admit that social media does play a huge role in influencing us in terms of decision making. Back then, in my day, we only had Facebook and Twitter. I can imagine what people in their 20s are going through right now with the likes of Instagram and all these other social media platforms that really make you feel like you can't afford nothing. So you're under pressure to keep up. The thing about being in your 20s is that you feel immense pressure to keep up with the Kardashian in this context being your friends or your peers. And with that, you feel compelled to go and buy things that, one, you don't need, and two, you're compromising on the things you need and most likely you can't even really afford. Talk about keeping up with the Kardashians. An example of what I did is that in my 20s, just after getting a license, I went and bought myself brand new Polo GTI. I was 22, just got a promotion, and felt it important that, my status serves or meets my double-digit paycheck. Why? So I went and bought the car, couldn't drive it. I obviously bumped it a couple of times, or way too many times. And I forgot everything they taught me in accounting about a car being a depreciating asset now. Looking back now, I should have bought a second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand car to learn on, bump it all I want. The insurance on that car was ridiculous because I did not have any driving experience. It was the latest model in the market and I wanted it. Why? Keep up with the Kardashians. Another example was when in my 20s, I blew my entire rent on alcohol in a club because for that moment I was invisible. I was Bill Gates' adopted child. That was me at that time. Drinks on me. That's what I kept saying. And I woke up to a bank notification that said, I have basically spent all my rent money. Don't be me. Don't do it. Lesson number 2 that I learned in my 20s. That thing called the bank, it's not your friend. It's actually your number one enemy of progress in your 20s and every other age group there is that comes after that. I'll tell you why. So remember the car that I was telling you about? Turns out I had to get it financed via a loan from the bank. But before I could get the car, I needed to get a credit card because I needed a credit record. Yours truly was so financially savvy that she never got herself a clothing account. So by the time I wanted a car, I needed something that was a quick win. So I got a credit card from where? The bank. Remember the house that I was telling you about? Yeah. That house, it was mortgaged by the bank. You see where I'm going here? So all in all, I had the house, the car, the credit card, which I used in my previous video as mentioned, take my boyfriend on a vacation of his life and cheat on me, and also to finish my apartment. So I was the ideal candidate. But here's the thing though, I couldn't afford any of it. It wasn't mine. It belonged to what? The bank. See why it's not your friend? Lesson number 3 that I learned in my 20s is start saving early and thank yourself later. So let's go back to my story about my credit issue. Remember that? Yeah, it just got worse. By the time I was 25, I had nothing substantially valuable that was mine. I was hip deep in credit, owing a mortgage, car, credit card, and basically living from paycheck to paycheck every month. Because when I was making those decisions, never once did I do any research about the costs, underlying costs that were associated with each one. Number 1, the levies and the rates and the taxes on the house. Number 2 would be the balloon payment on the car. Number 3 would be the interest rates on the credit card. Never once did I do proper research on any of those. Regardless, some of them I knew, but I just thought, why not? So by the time I was 25, I knew something's got to give. Okay? That's when I made an executive decision to turn my life around. I changed my life dramatically when I started to apply the following saving principles. And they were slow and they were gradual at first, but with every month in which I was applying them, I saw the difference. So first of all, I took a bottle of alcohol, sat down and wrote down all of my expenses. From, my operating and household expenses or living expenses to any interest rates that I have to pay on any credits that I owe, all of it. By the time I was done, I was in tears. Yeah. I then started to reduce my credit, starting with the easiest credit to reduce, and that was my credit card. Every month, I started putting aside 500 rands and putting it into that credit card and not touching it at all. From the balance sheet or reconciliation that I had done on my living expenses, there was a little bit of savings and I learned to live within my means. So from the savings, I separated savings into, this is your living budget now, Namka, because you have gone and messed up your entire financial life. So in order to salvage that, you're going to live off this small budget for the next couple of years and start paying off your credit with this much. I think a year and a half later, I was done paying for the credit card. And each time I got a bonus from a job, I would half that bonus and use what I call the 50-30-20 rule, which essentially I used a large portion to pay back what I owed. 4 years later, by the time I was 30, I was done paying for the credit card and I was done paying for the car and the balloon payment. And I had paid up so much of that house that I was able to use the money to be able to take myself to school for the first year that I was doing my MBA. So in that example, I dramatically changed but was a credit to benefit myself. Now, I don't believe in punishing yourself too much. So once I had paid off my credit card, for example, I started applying what is called generally the 50-30-20 rule when it comes to saving. 50% is when you're saving for an important investment that you want to have. 30% is when you're saving for a rainy day. And that 20% is when you're saving for luxuries. So here's how I implemented my saving rule. Like I mentioned before, every bonus and every salary increase I got, I split it up using that rule, because in as much as you work hard, you also want to reward yourself, right? You're trying to save, not punish yourself financially. I also used the difference in the salary whenever I moved to a new job. I saved up that difference in salary and put it in the 50%, because you can't miss what you never had, right? And then as I started accumulating more savings, I then started to reduce the 50 to a 30%. Like I said, you reward yourself, right? I'm a big believer in that. And that is basically how I was able to salvage my disastrous financial status. Advice number 4 in terms of things I wish I knew in my 20s about money would be start investing your money into 2 things. The first one being creating memories. So that bucket, be that this Louis Vuitton bag that you've always wanted and you've saved up for, be it traveling to Paris as one of your bucket list items, right? So that's that bucket. And then the second one would be start saving for the future. In your 20s, the world is literally your oyster. You can afford to make reckless decisions because you still have the luxury of time on your side. So why I recommend the first bucket in terms of experiences is, at the end of the day, we are human beings living and enjoying this beautiful wonder that we are privileged to call life. As part of that journey, reward yourself with experiences that rejuvenate and encourage you to continue to save. That's the first part. For the second bucket, there are numerous investment portfolios that you can use that I wish I had known about in my early 20s instead of finding out about them in my late 20s like I did. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is diversify your investment portfolio. ETFs are one of the most effective and financially safe and also not costly, ways in which you can invest. Another example would be that I wish I knew about in my 20s would be the Satrix Top 40. Satrix is a number of investment portfolios, so each to their own, depending on your affordability. But the top 40 account specifically is targeted at your 20s, and you'd be amazed at the financial benefit that you will get from that account 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And you'll thank yourself for that. Also very important, do your research when it comes to other options. I know that there are also bonds, there are unit trusts that you can put your money into. Just don't do what I did, which is to only focus on one thing, which is just property, because return on investment when it comes to property is really slow, and it's also very highly market dependent. Yes, all the others are, but they're not as highly dependent. So do your research. There are various options out there that can accommodate a 20-year-old budget. Lesson number 5 in terms of things I wish I knew in my 20s would be learn to set boundaries in terms of things you can and can't do financially for your friends and your family. That is an important thing to remember. In your 20s, your job is to live. The most important priority, and not just in your 20s, but generally in life, you yourself and only yourself are your most important priority in life. If you pour out of an empty cup, what will be left for you? Nothing. You work really, really hard. So it's important that you prioritize your wants, your needs over and above everyone else. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, that includes your family. If you've got, give. But set boundaries in terms of what realistically you can afford to give. And budgeting comes in really handy in that regard. And also, when you start setting boundaries in terms of affordability, you are teaching people how to treat you when it comes to money. I will admit that, social media does play a huge. It's also important to note that people will take for as long as you are willing to give. So remember, start really setting those boundaries when it comes to finances for yourself. And most importantly, learn to say, I only have this much. I can't help. Or good old no one, you're not at a people-pleasing stage in your 20s, especially not when it comes to your money. So learn to prioritize who you spend your money with or who you spend your money on. So those are the 5 things that I wish I knew in my 20s about money, ladies and gents. And I hope that you really found this video useful. Please do engage with the content and refer back to my previous videos. I will definitely put up the links at the end of this video so you can look at the entire series. But essentially, engage, give me your feedback. I hope with this you are looking forward to part 3 of my series, which is targeted on friendships. And what I wish I knew about friendships in my 20s. Until then, goodbye and God bless.